just thank my uncle here for allowing me the space to speak, and I'll just sing you a quick song. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you, Andrew. If everyone could stand up. I know that it's morning time, and if anyone's like me, you start slow. I always need my coffee, so my name is Anpao Duta Flying Earth, like Steve just now introduced. I'm the Executive Director and Principal at the Native American Community Academy. And what I'm gonna ask you to do now is introduce yourself to somebody not sitting at your table. Ask them where they're from, what they do, possibly exchange a business card. Go ahead and do that now. Take 30 more seconds. Take 10 more seconds. And come back in 3, 2, 1. Okay. Thank you so much. Once you close out your conversation, you can have a seat. The reason I asked you to do that is that there's a certain type of energy when you interact with people. There's a certain type of energy that you have when you ask somebody questions and you start developing relationships. And I think as educators, we all know that. We all hold that essential to what we do. Otherwise, we'd probably be in a different profession making more money, right? A little bit about our school is we were founded in 2006. We're chartered through the Albuquerque Public Schools. And similar to what you just did, there were lots of questions and conversations surrounding what does adequate, intentional, excellent, and relevant education look like for students in Albuquerque. when we started to look at some of the disaggregated data, we found that Native American students were performing at the bottom of all academic achievement indicators. So our community began to respond, well, what do we do? What is our response? And how will we not operate out of scarcity, but out of power and abundance? So out of those conversations, our community raised up 3 things that they wanted to see be a part of the charter school. Academic preparation for the next step after high school, whether that was college or career. Identity, a focus on culture and language context, and as well as holistic wellness. So not just looking at one facet of the child, but looking at intellectual wellness, physical wellness, social, emotional, and community and relationship. I will say that that's part of the special sauce of our school now, is that the community voice and the community-led design process was front and center for us, and still is 14 years later, is that those types of relationship building and those types of conversations that we had together have equaled fruits now. So we've graduated 8 classes. We have had students come back and are actually working at the school. So we have 10 to 12 full-time employees who are also alumni. I think 3 or 4 of them are teachers. And if I could step back a little further, the context for the creation of our school is important too. We are probably about 2 minutes from our school, and some of you will have an opportunity to go visit during this gathering. And if you don't, feel free to come back and visit. 2 minutes away is the last standing building of the old Albuquerque Indian School. The Albuquerque Indian School represented an era of boarding schools. Anybody who has delved deep into the history of education for American Indian and Native American students in this country know that boarding schools represent a violent and racist history in this country that was about assimilation and Americanization of students. They were literally the motto, kill the Indian, save the man, attached to these schools. This is the energy that colors how our families interact with schools today. Though there are no more boarding schools like the ones that existed in the late 1800s, early 1900s, the way in which our families interact with schools is still colored with that emotion. So it's absolutely paramount that we bring back some of these understandings and teachings, just like Andrew helped to start us with those protocols of setting intentions, of acknowledging the land, of acknowledging who is here, and also acknowledging those relationships. So even that energy that all of us just now started to percolate a little bit more in this room was some of those things we wanted to lift up in 2006. And some of those things that we wanted to change, right? So not operating out of the victimization or the deficit, but actually out of the power and the genius of our community. On behalf of NACA, we want to welcome everyone here to Albuquerque, to the city where we are, and also to the work that's so special to us. You'll have an opportunity to listen to some panels from some of our students. Actually, Andrew will be presenting with one of his classmates later on. So really wanted to thank Steve for the time and space, for kind of talking a little bit about our work, talking about the context, and allowing us to acknowledge the people whose land we're on now. I just saw our founding principal and one of my mentors walk into the room, and I want to make sure you guys hear from her. And it's so special to us because she was named Deputy Secretary for the Public Education Department of the state of New Mexico, which is a huge win to have a Native woman in that place. So I want to call it Kara Bobroff.
I want to acknowledge Andrew, thank you, and Duta for opening up this morning. So, Yate, Kara, Bobroff, Yinishe, Ashin, Ashli, Natani, Bashishchin. My name's Kara Bobroff. I'm Navajo on my mother's side in the Saul clan from a community called Rama, which is about an hour away from here, an hour and 15 minutes on the Navajo Nation. And then I'm born for Lakota, the Pine Ridge area on my father's side, but I was raised here in Albuquerque, very much like what Duta was sharing about the urban presence of Native American people and indigenous people in our city, and also within our state. We have 22 different tribes. I'm not sure if you shared that or not, but 19 pueblos that are geographically located, the Jicarilla as well as Mescalero, and then the Navajo Nation, which spans both New Mexico, Arizona, and Utah, so one of the largest tribes in the country. But I just want to say welcome to New Mexico, and how many of you have enjoyed yourself so far? I think you just got here yesterday. Yeah, okay. It's a beautiful place, and it's a beautiful time of year. I think it's a time of year where we start to see some things that are stopping and other things that are starting as far as the change in the seasons. Just wanted to acknowledge that as well. Like Duta said, I started out as the founding principal of the Native American Community Academy, and I think that what I just wanted to kind of make 3 points, and then I'm going to turn it over to Steve. But one is that the charge for NACA really came out of a call from our community who had been working on issues related to Native American students for a very long time. The district itself started an equity council. This was right after the time No Child Left Behind was passed. People started to look at outcomes related to Native American students and other students, but just saw this need for something different for these students, knowing that we had so many strengths within our community. I started out as a special education teacher at the middle school I went to, which was always weird to teach next to the people you were taught by. I don't know how many of you have had that experience, but okay. So it was like, anyway. Became an assistant principal within our district, which is about 80,000 students, and then went on to the Bay Area to be a dean of students in Marin County, where I saw incredible inequities between what I had as a student is also what I saw within the system at Albuquerque Public Schools, and then also in places like the Navajo Nation. These kids had access to everything you can possibly imagine, yet it was a public school, pretty typical, 650 students, grades 6 through 7, 8. I just started to think about what might happen at that point. Back here, conversations were taking place about the need for a Native American magnet and or charter school. Continued on, was a principal on the Navajo Nation out in an area called NUCUM, which is just between Shiprock, I don't know if any of you guys know where this is or not, in Gallup, but spans about, in one direction. Our students were traveling an hour to sometimes 2 hours to school every day and every morning and home. Serves 7 different chapters, which are independent government governing bodies for those communities. So it was very rural, 250 students, and saw the difference there as well. Meanwhile, this is like 6 years probably that this was going on. The school district was still thinking about what to do to serve those students. Excuse me. And so when I came back to Albuquerque, the question was like, does this happen as a magnet school or a charter school? And I was not a charter school person whatsoever, never really saw myself starting a school, but really worked with our community to do that. And so at that point, it made sense because the school district had a really specific need. The leadership of the school district and the community on this equity council, which was probably 40 or 50 different individuals, combined with the vision of an indigenous women's group, really came together to ask the question, like, what can we do? Out of that came the 3 things that Duta shared, that our students would be actively prepared for college, secure in their identity, and healthy. So we're one of the first collaborative charters, and I think that's really unique too, is that we're not necessarily starting a school that's doing the same thing that the school district's doing, or another charter, or another alternative school, or a magnet school, or even a private school, or any other schools that we had. But it really was an opportunity to bring the community together to come up with a solution that now, 14 years later, I think, excuse me, is really thriving and serving students. From that, we're not a charter management organization by any shape or form. In New Mexico, we don't actually have CMOs. I'm not sure if anybody shared that with you, and I think that's another unique aspect of what the charter law in our state set out to do, is really to do what everybody in this room is like talking about, and having a unique, specific, independent charter movement. So that's really part of the aspect of what we do. But out of that, we started to get questions about how do you share your work? So I'm not how many of you have had that question, like how do we do what you're doing? Has anybody ever asked? And sometimes you get pressure to say like, well, let's replicate what you're doing. And so there's different ways about, documenting what you're doing, trying to think about, do you open up 30 NACAs? And we were like, no, don't do that. That's not the point. Point is to engage your community, whether you're in a small community in South Dakota, Oklahoma, Colorado. Oh yes, Oklahoma, awesome. Or in California, but really thinking about what's the need, what's the unique aspect of that, and what's the best way to achieve that goal. So we started a network focused on Indigenous education called the NACA Inspired Schools Network. Because if you're able to visit our school, you immediately meet students like Andrew, you immediately connect with teachers who are really strong curriculum developers who are thinking differently about their work. You meet like the families, after school providers, as well as our community partners, and you start to see that that's really something that is within the context of our community, but it doesn't mean that we can't learn from one another in order to share that. So today we work with a variety of different communities across the country focused on Indigenous education, whether that's in the Bureau of Indian Education system, a public education system, a new charter, or an early learning model. So just thinking differently about the role of what that means versus replication and predetermined assumptions about what a community might need is not what we want to see. What we want to see is like communities leading the way in order to really serve students in the way that we know students and families want to see their students be served. So the last thing I want to say is that the other aspect of sharing our work is in New Mexico, and we'll talk more about this tomorrow on a panel, is a landmark lawsuit called Martinez-Yazzie versus State of New Mexico, which looks at the heart of equity, both from an adequacy standpoint, but more importantly, how are we serving students? So the things that we've learned from schools across the state who are serving these students really, really well will continue to be lifted up and shared, and some of those things are already being shared from the charter sector, like the starting of an equity council, thinking about culturally and linguistically responsive education. How do we better serve students with disabilities? What are things that we can do that are more learner-centered versus school-centered? So the list goes on, as you can imagine. But I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit about where our students are from, what they aspire to do, and I think New Mexico is an amazing place. We have a lot of major strengths across our state and a lot of our major strengths within our charter sector. We have approximately just under 100 charters across the state. Most of them are here in the city, some down south, some out on the Navajo Nation, as well as some of the more rural areas. So if you get a chance to step into a school, please do. But thank you for your time. I hope you have a wonderful time while you're here. I look forward to coming back tomorrow. And thank you, Duta and Andrew, for starting us out this morning. Thank you.